Got a great question this week from a mom. We get this a lot. We had some great answers on it, but I thought I would cover it this week because I haven't covered it in a long time in this forum. But the idea of like, when should your goalie specialize? Okay, so for those of you guys in the group, we had some interesting things happen this week. We had a goalie. We had a dad up in Massachusetts whose goalie had a rough go and was just kind of sick of it. And I think his goalie's 11, and just said enough and basically quit his club team. And so I'm not always a fan of quitting club teams, but I'm also not against it either. I believe strongly. I want my athletes to be empowered no matter what the age, but everything has its limits, right? So, but the idea here about when should a young lacrosse goalie start to specialize as a goalie is it's always an interesting question. And so, for a lot of you guys who followed me for a while, my work at athletespecific.com, like I work with athletes in a variety of sports. And so this concept of, athletes should play multiple sports and that's how you get real well-rounded. Those days have changed because now, if your athlete likes a particular sport, and we're all here for lacrosse, but if your athlete likes a particular sport, and then you say like, okay, but you got to play soccer too, and then they go play soccer, but then that experience pales in comparison to the lacrosse experience they're having. Well, that's a tough sell. And I believe that we can make athletes in other ways. We can work on them with their strength and conditioning, and I encourage athletes, like if they're not going to go play soccer or basketball or something else, that they maybe do gymnastics or parkour or take up wrestling or things like that'll help them become a well-rounded athlete. And that's really the question. That's really the answer to this question, is like, what are we trying to create? Are we trying to create a goalie? And my answer to that is no. We're trying to create an athlete who plays the goalie position. And the reason why I phrase it like that is because your goalie, and actually your athlete in any sport, is always at risk of a better athlete supplanting them, right? So if you take two athletes of equal technical ability and one has better physical ability, the one with better physical ability wins. Okay. So the idea here is that let's say your goalie is like, it doesn't matter what age really. Let's say they're 9, but they could be 14. And the question is like, oh, my kid's a freshman in high school. Should they specialize as a goalie now or things? I'm gonna phrase this a little bit differently. One, does your goalie like the goalie position? Okay. Does your little athlete like the goalie position? Now, your goalie may have backed into this position. And what I mean by that is that they may not like to run, right? They may like the safety of the crease and they don't like all the contact out in the field. So they might like the gear. They might like the authority that it looks like they have. It's a special position. It's got special rules, and some kids migrate to that. And I joke about they don't like to run, but we all know that goalie, right? And I could tell you stories of goalies that started out like that kid who didn't want to run, and then now they've gotten to college and they're like they're the best athlete on the field. Okay, that happens, right? So even if your goalie started out because they were basically a little lazy and maybe didn't have the stick skills, they can still become a great athlete. It may take them a little bit of time. But you got to always look at your goalie and realize that, all right, there's 3 key abilities to be successful as an athlete in any sport, in any position: physical ability, a technical ability, and a tactical ability, right? So physical ability is the easiest one to improve. Technical ability takes some effort, but then tactical ability is really what your coach wishes you could do. Like when the coach says, hey, we got to run this clear a certain way, or we got to do this, or we got to do that they're talking tactics, right? We're going to run this man up. We're going to, run this slide on man down, like whatever. Those are tactics. So your coach wants you to be able to use your physical ability to execute technical skills in a tactical environment. Does that make sense? Okay. So the question then is, when do you start? I believe that a lot of us as coaches have seen this experience where, like, the end of the season comes, there's a week to go, maybe you got a game left, maybe you don't, you got a couple practices, you're going to mess around, and you get some attackman or offensive player who jumps in the cage just for fun, throws on the goalie gear, gets in there, but they've got good stick skills and they do really well. You're like, wow, dang, I wish maybe Jimmy or Karen was in the cage all year. And why is that? Well, they have good stick skills, and they may have a better understanding of what a shooter can do. And so this goes down to, as a goalie, you're developing an understanding of shooters. I call it the shooter library or a shot library. And then your goalie is developing their response to those shots. So I call it their save library. So a goalie can develop their save library if all they are in the cage. But part of developing your save library is understanding what shooters can do and from where. And you can get that by just watching a lot of film and watching a lot of lacrosse or watching a lot of video where you slow it down and you can see what it goes, or you get it by actually playing out in the field. And so at any level, so I've got a goalie that's part of Lacrosse Goalie University, and I've been working with him this season. We're on the phone once a week. He's one of the top goalies in the country and in his age group. But on his team, they have two goalies. And I even encourage this goalie, said, listen, you should be playing. I hate seeing kids sit around. So I encourage him to play long stick midi when he's not in the cage. And he's on his club team. His coach allows him to do it. On his high school team, his high school coach doesn't let him do it. But on his travel team, the coach is like, yeah, sure, whatever. Let's have some fun. And he understands, so he plays long stick midi, but he also plays short stick defensive midi. And he has developed this understanding of what needs to happen on the field and what players can do in certain situations and what they can't do. And so that's really important. And so I see, even at the college level, I see goalies who let in shots because they don't understand what a shooter can do in certain situations. Now, one, I think that's lazy. Two, I think that comes down to just lack of development and things like that. And it's always shocking. I had a conversation this week on Facebook Messenger with a dad who's got a college son, and we were both shocked at some things we saw this week. And we're just like, man, that's a goalie that just hasn't developed that aspect of their game. So this is why I tell everybody, the lacrosse goalie of the future, we have not seen the best goalies play this sport. That goalie is probably in your backyard. There's an opportunity for your goalie to supplant, to play better than the goalies they're watching now, because there's these major gaps in development. So should your goalies specialize? Well, let me ask you this. If your goalie is young and they don't want to play any other position, but they really like the goalie position, I'm probably not going to force that kid to play a different position. Okay. I don't want to I don't want to take a good situation and make it bad, but I will gently remind this goalie, hey, okay, let's learn how to do certain things. Like a goalie who's 9 and they're playing with a goalie stick, I will tell you, they are retarding their growth, their development of stick skills by only using a goalie stick. Right? Because they just don't have the strength to use a goalie stick, but they have the strength to put a short stick in their hand and twirl that thing, man, like a freaking baton leading a marching band. You've all seen that kid who can develop those stick skills. Well, when you take your goalie and you give him a short stick and you say, listen, I want you to work on your stick skills, they become better in the cage. Okay. And then they might actually decide to go play out. Right. Now, if your goalie is, let's say they're short and slow and maybe a little chubby, well, and all their teammates are fast and lean and light and quick, I don't want to put your goalie out in that situation either. But from a developmental standpoint, I'm going to encourage that goalie to say, listen, you're going to be a better goalie if we play basketball in the off season. Oh, but Dad, I hate basketball. I know, but we're going to use it to become a better lacrosse goalie. How's that sound? Oh, okay, that makes sense, right? So none of this stuff makes sense unless you give a goalie what I call the anchor, right? So it's one thing for your goalie to say, I only like being a goalie, and it's another thing for the goalie to say, like, I want to be a really good goalie. Okay, great. Well, part of that is Coach Edwards at Athlete Specific has this 3 key ability course. It's free. We can, like, let's watch it together. Okay, we'll watch it, and they figure it out, and then they go, oh yeah, okay, I got to develop my physical ability, my technical ability, my tactical ability. Okay, cool. Well, maybe okay, yeah, maybe I will, like, maybe I'll do that parkour class this off season and work on my athletic ability. Okay, cool, good stuff, right? Those are all options. So that's one thing. If your goalie just wants to be a goalie, well, do they want to? If they want to be a good goalie, they'll start to understand where all these pieces go together, right? If they're lazy and they don't want to play under any other positions, I'm not going to throw them into a position that they're unhappy with. I might lose the kid altogether. I don't want that, right? But the flip side of all this, okay, the flip side of all this is when a program makes your kid the goalie, okay? So let's say your kid is on a team and they're a decent goalie. Like, their future isn't set in stone for sure, but let's say they're a decent goalie, but they're the best goalie on that team. And so what can happen sometimes is that, like, let's say your team has another goalie, but they're kind of like, wishy-washy, and she realizes she's the backup, and she doesn't want to, you're better than she is, so she doesn't want to go in the cage and have her team laugh at her because you're better than she is. Well, that's one way that you end up being the default goalie, is the team kind of just says, no, wait, man, you're the best goalie we have, you play. Okay, even if you want to play out, right? There are times there where I would encourage you to put your foot down. Like, if you, as a parent, if you look at your goalie and say, like, okay, I get it. I understand what Coach Edwards is saying, and we need, like, a well-rounded athlete. I want to get my goalie out of the cage and enjoying it, because if they're getting shelled or whatever, get them out of the cage so they work on their stick skills and work on their physical ability, running and being aggressive out in the field. Then sometimes you have to go to the coach and go, listen, coach, my kid's like U10. We're not trying to win everything here. I'm trying to develop my goalie for the next. He'll play one half, and then he gets to play out in the second half. Well, we don't have another goalie. Find one, right? If that's your option, do it. Okay. If the coach says no, he's going to be our goalie, then I would find another program. I really would, because my job as a coach, I always say this, is so I'm trying to get my athlete to be better at the next level. All right. So that's where you've got to decide, like, all right, I'm trying to develop my athlete to the best of their ability. And there's always pressure about, like, hey, what do you do? Like, if your goalie, all their friends are on this team, and they can't do that, you're going to have to make those. That's a parenting choice that you're going to have to make those choices on the run. Right. But the idea is that we want to develop a goalie to get to the next level. Right. And so that's really important. And you're in the Netherlands, right? This is so cool. Willem, love it. So the question is, but what if the team doesn't have enough players, other goalies, enough to let the goalie play other positions? How do you train your goalie to gain that knowledge or diversity? And your kiddo doesn't like other sports besides swimming. Oh, Sweden. Sorry, Anne. That was, like, really offensive. I said Netherlands and you're from Sweden. It's almost like saying you're from Norway. Sorry. That's really bad. Okay. So from Anne from Sweden. Love it. So yeah, swimming is not great for field athletes. There's just a balance issue. But again, if they love swimming, go ahead. All right. So how do you gain that knowledge? Well, what I do with goalies is I will give them, I want them to shoot. I want them to play out of the cage in drills and practice. So, like, I will take my goalie. So let's say I just have one goalie, right? And I can shoot on them all practice, but that's tiring, right? So what I may do is I'll say, like, all right, listen, I'm going to have you're going to do this drill. You're going to take, like, 5 shots, and then I want you to hop in the back of this line and run through, and I want you to shoot just like the other shooters do. I want you to dodge and whatever. And they can use their goalie stick, or they can use their short stick, whatever. Switching back and forth is tough. But the idea is, like, I want to get them out in the field. I want to get them mobile. I want to get them moving. As for learning shooters, like shots and shooters, what I do is as a coach is I'll tell my team, all right, listen, and this is why like as a coach, a lot of coaches are single-handed. Like they have one coach and maybe they have a volunteer, like an assistant, but maybe that assistant can't shoot, whatever. I want my goalie getting shot on by other players. Like I want them learning those. It doesn't make sense for my young goalie to be shot on by like an adult male, right? That doesn't make any sense. So I'll have my shooters shoot, or my team shoot, and I'll say like, okay, I want all shots stick side high, and I want all shots overhand, right? Like I want shots like players. This is something that coaches rarely do. Is coaches say, okay, we're going to run this drill, and you're going to shoot from this spot, and that's it. But coaches players then don't develop stick skills. So what I'll tell players to do is like, all right, I want you to shoot from here, but I want you to shoot like low to high or sidearm or high to low, right? So now the player's developing those shots too. So my goalie then starts to go, oh, that's what those shots look like when they're going down there, right? So it's like the Arnold Palmer golf story where, supposedly Arnold Palmer never took a shot where he didn't know where he wanted the ball to land, right? So, so what he did was, he picked the club he wanted. He's like, okay, I'm this distance from the goal, the green. I'm taking this shot, and then he would take that shot. And if the shot didn't land where he wanted it to land, he would now bring that back. His brain could bring it back, and now he had feedback. That works for your shooter. It also works for your goalie. Okay. So when a coach says, all right, listen, we want you to shoot in a certain way from this position. So you can pick any scenario in a game, and this is kind of fun to do too. You go on Instagram, you search through the videos, you save a bunch, right? And then you go to practice and you say, okay, girls, or okay, guys, this play that happened this weekend, we're going to replicate that play. Right. So so what did the player do? Oh yeah. The player like drove from X and came above goal line and got up to this point. And then she like rolled back and then she stutter stepped. She came back around and then she shot low to high. Cool. We're all going to try that. Sweet. Awesome. Right. And so now your players have an anchor. They have something that they tried to do. They saw it on TV and they're like, all right, we're going to do it. And you know what's going to happen? And they're going to suck at it. But now your goalie's going to be in the cage and they're going to get all this like, okay, I know what the team's trying to do and this is what they all look like. All right. There's that one little girl and she always shoots in a certain way. Like she shoots like that. And that's what that stick looks like from her when they're shooting low to high. Right. And then there's that other girl who's like really big and I can never see her stick when she rolls like, oh, but yeah, when she comes this way and now she has to rotate her shoulders to get your goalie's just getting all that knowledge. Okay. Not always as deliberately as I'm explaining it, but it's just coming. Okay. So the flip side of that is you have your goalie go out there and do those shots as well and realize like, oh, okay. I'm sure there's a lot of girls who watched the final and saw Charlotte North wind up on an 8-meter shot and go, oh my God, I can't believe you can actually do that with a women's stick. I know there's some guys that thought that, right? But that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal. So I hope that answers the question, Anne. But the idea there is that it has to come from somewhere, and it has to come deliberately. Because if all your goalie sees is the same shooters every day, right? Which they do, and those shooters shoot in the same style every single day, and then you go out and play. Well, I got a story for you. I grew up in Massachusetts. And at the time, lacrosse wasn't nearly as developed in Massachusetts as it is now. But I had this mindset like, okay, I want to be the best goalie in my league. I want to be the best goalie in Massachusetts. And now I've got to test my game outside of Massachusetts. So I went to Maryland and I went to New York. And what I realized was like shooters there had wrists. They shot differently. Like in New England, a lot of guys just muscled the ball and you could see the head of the stick and then you go to Maryland and you'd see, and I'm going up against guys who are like high school Americans and they got wrists and they've got touch and they've got like, man, the ball it was a whole different experience and it was a whole different language. So I needed to learn that language. That when I went back home, when I went back to my team, it was a different language again. And it was a language I understood. But now if I'm going to play at the next level, I got to learn that language. Right. So that's kind of my best analogy there. So you got to do your best to kind of make it happen, be creative, put your goalie in that situation, force your shooters to mix things up. And the other thing is to watch a lot of video, right? Is to watch a lot of video and be able to and take that time, go through my cheat sheets after a game, see like where the shots were taken, where they went, which ones you saved, which ones you missed, those sorts of things. So that's really important. So, Anne, that's a great question. All right. By the way, I think I gave the first ever lacrosse sticks to Sweden. True story. So I did luge. My buddy Bengt and Rickard Walden, who have a personal training studio in Stockholm, I gave them 2 lacrosse sticks. This is back in like early 90s, and I swear they're the first lacrosse sticks that ever went to Sweden. Yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So anyhow, so thank you, and that's I really appreciate that. Okay. Send us some video, post some video of your goalie in our group, Korean Lacrosse Goalie Future. We want to see Swedish lacrosse, what it looks like. Okay. All right, guys, thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.